reviewing our current district systems and curriculum. For this past school year, the Equity Task Force began working on its first bucket, student safety and engagement. The task force conducted a November professional development session and panel, a community session, completed a survey for all families and students, and then did focus groups based on the results of that survey. In addition, the task force has studied national and statewide research related to student safety and engagement. As a result of this work, a final report has been completed that includes our findings, recommendations, and guiding questions. I'll use the rest of my time in this presentation to review the findings from our report. The Equity Task Force studied and synthesized the findings from surveys, focus groups, and meetings conducted during the 2021-2022 school year. There were several main themes that stood out. The first is that students belonging to marginalized groups such as students of color, Indigenous students, LGBTQ+ students, and students with disabilities feel less safe at school than other students. This has contributed to some of these students missing school because they feel unwelcome or unsafe. Further, these students also reported bullying based on their identity, including derogatory slurs. When students reported these issues, the response from staff may not have been entirely successful in changing patterns of behavior and repairing the harm that has occurred. Finally, all types of students reported safety concerns in less supervised and unstructured spaces like hallways, cafeterias, bathrooms, and the buses. Our local findings mirror national and statewide findings on these issues. Based on the findings from our focus groups and the surveys, the Equity Task Force has identified 14 key recommendations that fall under these themes: bullying, harassment, and interrupter training, inclusive schools, gender equity, increasing student voice, and building a united community. I will now explore each of these themes in more detail. Our first recommendation area is really focused on being proactive and in minimizing unsafe and undersupervised places where bullying, harassment are more likely to occur, coupled with providing training and supports for school staff, administrators, and students on how to intervene when these situations do occur. Our staff and students' identities, interests, and backgrounds vary widely, which makes the Brainerd Lakes region a special place to call home. This can also contribute to disagreement or incidents of hate and intolerance, of which our staff need support and training in how to address and create a caring school community. Part of how we hope to address this is to use more restorative practices when conflicts arise. I'm pleased to report that last week we were one of 20 school districts in the state of Minnesota to win a competitive grant of $132,000 to be used for the next 2 years to strengthen our restorative practices and our social emotional learning training for all staff. So very exciting. We were the only greater Minnesota district to receive that. Yeah. Through trainings and restorative practices, we are hoping that when harm like a derogatory slur occurs, administrators will feel confident in how to facilitate a discussion between the victim and the victimizer to repair that harm and build back that relationship and restore our community. Our second recommendation area is around creating more inclusive schools where everyone's languages, family backgrounds, race, ethnicity, and religions are valued and welcomed. We would recommend creating a toolkit for schools with suggestions on inclusive practices that are really those things that just create universal access for all to belong at our school. I'll share an example of this from my own family. My father has hearing loss, and something I have learned through his experiences and his journey is that when he is in an event like this, having a microphone for that presenter rather than just someone shouting and projecting their voice loudly really helps him be able to hear. And during that, I also learned that that actually helps me focus. That helps me hear too and focus on that presenter. And as I dug into that, I learned that there's research that shows that that supports people with ADHD, people with cognitive impairments, all sorts of people. Just having a simple microphone really can make a difference for access in a meeting. In addition to this toolkit, we would recommend creating a language access plan to be in compliance with state and federal law for limited English proficient families. We would also recommend exploring the Minnesota Bilingual SEALS program, which is a way to recognize students who are proficient in both English and another language. These students get a bilingual seal on their diploma, and then they earn free college credit from Minnesota state universities, as well as universities all across the nation. Our next two recommendation areas are to increase gender equity and opportunities for authentic student voice. Sadly, 89% of LGBTQ youth in Minnesota report hearing homophobic or negative remarks and slurs, and nearly half of them have experienced at least one form of anti-LGBTQ discrimination at school. Two ways we identified in the research that increase school belonging and safety for these youth are having supportive school clubs and comprehensive policies that prohibit discrimination or victimization. Presently, there are many state and federal laws protecting the rights of LGBTQ youth that Brainerd Schools is following. The Equity Task Force recommends that the school board adopt a formal board policy or administrative procedure, such as the Minnesota School Board Association guidelines, that demonstrates our compliance with these regulations and our commitment to creating safe and supportive schools for all children, regardless of sexual or gender identity. The task force also recommends continuing to expand student clubs that increase belonging for all students and to look for places to keep adding student representatives and student input on decisions being made. Our last area of recommendations is to work towards creating a united community. Our Equity Task Force would like to continue to create events that allow for conversation across areas of difference because we believe belonging and connecting starts with building understanding of one another's perspective. We would also recommend focusing on efforts that bring us together through common causes to create community. As we heard in the communications update, or will hear later after this presentation, Brainerd Public Schools is really about that place to belong. And that's what we really want to start in our Equity Task Force work. As we reflect on the findings and recommendations, these are the guiding questions we have developed to help the school board and school staff when they are developing programs, policies, and curricular materials. I want to touch on just a couple of these in the interest of time. The first is, how are the identities of all students affirmed in our district? We heard in our survey that some families are fearful that when we focus on access for marginalized groups, that children who belong to dominant majority groups may feel like their cultural traditions or viewpoints are less valuable. I want to be very clear that it is the goal of our Equity Task Force that all students will feel seen, valued, and that they belong at Brainerd Public Schools, regardless of their race, gender, religion, ability, and so forth. Each member of our school district has a special perspective that is to be honored and welcomed. The Equity Task Force work is about ensuring all students have universal access and removing any barriers that may be preventing that access for students. I also want to point out the guiding question of how have students been given opportunities to participate in and or influence decisions being made. Our task force commends the school board on your inclusion of students in your recent superintendent search and recommends that all schools and the board continue to put this guiding question at the center of their work. In terms of next steps for the Equity Task Force, we look to the school board for your input. As an advisory task force, we serve under the board's direction and vision for our work. We are very interested in any feedback you have on these recommendations, guiding questions, and our next steps. For our August meeting, our current plan is to use your feedback from today to work on these recommendations and to choose our next area of work from the remaining buckets on the Equity Long-Term Planning Framework. The task force also plans to add additional members, including a student, middle school teacher, and 2 additional community members. These positions will be advertised in accordance with our Equity Task Force membership guidelines. We are looking for people with a demonstrated commitment to equity, skill and cultural competence, and racial equality, and who bring a multidisciplinary perspective to this work. On behalf of our Equity Task Force, thank you for your time this evening and your demonstrated support of equity and inclusion for Brainerd Public Schools. We welcome any feedback or questions that you have about our report or this presentation.
Thank you. Great presentation. So you're looking for feedback from us tonight? Yeah.
If you have any feedback for tonight, or we could table that to a future meeting, or
I had
other
just one
ways.
curious question. If I understood right, there's plan for events. Has there been discussions of what type of events there might have, or?
Yeah, that's one recommendation we wanted to bring to the board, is to continue to create more unified events. We did hold one event prior to my work starting in the district that was a community event about the work that's being done. Some of the events that I have seen happen in other districts are really, there's some great organizations out there that can partner around talking about our differences, really building understanding, learning how to partner with people that may have different perspectives from you. So I would personally look to some of those organizations or doing some of those events.
The first event was very well done and very good. I think community members had good questions and they had a much better understanding of what the task force was doing after that. So I would continue to have at least those community meetings where we update what the plans are and what the findings are, and they can give their input too. So that was great, yeah. The grant that you received, can that be used for any of this, or is it just specific?
Yeah, it's specific to training in two areas: restorative practices and social emotional learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be one of your priorities, obviously.
Yep.
And I love the thought of doing more restorative justice kind of things with our kids. And we probably, there's a group out there, we could probably do it with them, I would think.
Yeah, we're really lucky that we have such a great community organization with Lakes Area Restorative Justice Project. So absolutely, we would hope to partner with them. And I've also been working with MDE around bringing training from the state to Brainerd. So we wouldn't have to travel to other areas for that.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's certainly fun to see where the group has come after these years and the hard work, and to be able to see it down in a format that you shared. I appreciate that. And I definitely want to encourage you all to continue that hard work. And I continue to support that work that you do, making sure that we provide a safe landing to all students, and a safe educational experience for all students. And I'm so pleased where we are today. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Candace.
All right. Thank you for your time.
And now are we ready for the communications update?
Yeah, it should be right. Should be good.
Okay, we were here last month, I guess, with a little bit of an update. We have a little bit bigger of an update tonight, but now we kind of got scooped by Candace because she kind of revealed a little bit about what we were going to say. So, but because she was supposed to come after me, so sorry about that. We want to talk a little bit about our positioning statement, which is kind of the whole basis for all of the different things that we are working on right now. And Heidi, you were going to kind of share how we came about with what that positioning statement is.
So we really, when we look at a comprehensive communications plan, a positioning statement is the place we can focus on, where we can link all of our work to. So when it comes back to answering the question, that's our positioning statement. So really, it's something that we want unique to Brainerd Public Schools. All of our work should link to that. When it comes to communications, it's going to tie back to that. You can see when we talk about it, it's really on the good days, it's going to be everything we take and celebrate with it. And when there's difficult days, which we do have, we're working with youth, that this is where we can find our respite and really find that comfort and reside within it. It's ours, and we're going to own that. And this is what it is. Brainerd Public Schools, a place to belong. So when we meet with our families and when we meet with our community, really what our schools create is the first question that comes from a parent isn't necessarily how they do on their chemistry test, but how is my child doing, right? Do they have a friend? Are they having a good experience in school? And so we really want each and every student at Brainerd Public Schools to feel like they belong here, that they can find a niche. So it doesn't matter from birth, like I've talked about, from experience in special ed, because we work with kids even before they're born, to 21. We have so many avenues and so many resources that each and every child can find something to make them feel connected and have them belong. And not only our students, but it's our staff and it's our community members. This is the place that people need to feel that they're part of. We're integral into our community. So that's it. This is our positioning statement. Brainerd Public Schools, a place to belong. We're gonna have differences. There's gonna be things, but this is gonna be where we're making a huge difference for each of our students. So when you start to hear things in the marketing and communications and things like that, we are gonna always tie it back to this. Our strategic plan is gonna tie back to this. Our communications plan will tie back to this. When a parent comes to concern, that should be the first question that comes from our administrators is, how does your child feel like they're connecting and how do they belong in this school and within our community? And same with our staff. Staff shouldn't just come here to work. This shouldn't just be a job. This should be a passion, right? You're working with kids, it should be a passion that you want to be a part of. So Brainerd Public Schools, a place to belong, is our positioning statement, and it's going to be the foundation of a comprehensive communication plan. We also think then it's our story to tell. So go ahead.
So when you look at the bee, the familiar bee that's been a part of our logo for a long time now, we were talking about all the different ideas that come to mind when you think of a place to belong and the different pieces that all come together to make it that. And these are just a handful of examples, but it can go on and on forever. So some different ways that we can talk about ways we are going to be. We're going to be present. We're going to be growing. We're going to be community. We're going to be respectful. We're going to be ourselves. We're going to be warriors. So those are just, some examples. There's lots of other ideas to look at. And so we're taking this whole theme and then working on some specific projects that'll be rolling out this month yet and into the rest of summer. And we just had a couple we wanted to share with you tonight. So first thing that we'll be doing is inviting the community to come and see all of our new buildings. And we're kind of sending them all a VIP pass to be able to come in. We've already gotten a couple of requests come through, even though we haven't actually mailed it out yet. So people are hearing about it. We're going to give them some personalized tours. And so we're excited about that.
And part of it, it's for a whole community, right? It's not just for I'm a parent and a student, it's for an entire community. Mm-hmm. And as COVID and things came, so there's all these things that happened where people weren't allowed in facilities, right? And now our facilities are almost all done. We're ready to have people in. We want people to see what's going on. The other thing is when there's questionings happening, come into the schools and be a part of our school and get involved in our schools. So that's the intent of the first part of belonging. If you want to be a part of it, come in, let's show you, let's answer questions, let's tell you how you can get involved, let's tell you what you can do to be a part of our warrior community. So we're super excited.
Yeah, and then I have just one example of a little promotional piece that was put together utilizing kind of this theme, and it's just a fun, I'm gonna play it here so you guys can get an idea. Oh, no, I'm gonna stop it. Do you know, is the audio not going to work on here probably?
I'm not sure.
Okay, hang
It's
on
much
a
more
second.
fun with sound.
Yes, it's really not.
I think you'd have to put your mic right down by the.
I wasn't making any noise here though either.
Because the mics are on.
So it's the computer's not.
We're gonna make Charles sing. You ready, Charles?
Nope. Okay, well, I'm sorry, but this gives you an idea of the visual, and it has just a kind of a cute little jingle that goes with it that we will be utilizing for several different things. So let me make that full screen so you can see. This is just a quick little promo of our amazing, performing arts space. Utilizing some of our existing photos that we have. We're getting some new media. We're putting together 3 or 4 similar pieces to this to start with, but we're going to just build and build and build on that as we gather more information, so.
With your comment on the, on the aircraft carrier, we could hum the beginning of Top Gun.
Oh, speaking of a summer, yeah,
Huh?
that would be great. No, and the intent again is, when you think of all the things that make up a school system,
Yes,
we have so many facets, from arts to activities, to athletics, to the academics, to, you know, childcare programs, to extended clubs and programs. So really, it's trying to give that visual to our community as well. And that's the intent of a lot. They're really short. So if you think about social media and scrolling or things like that, it's meant to be an attention grabber and make you think, wow, I should maybe check that out. Or maybe I need to ask a question of, when can my child get involved in orchestra or have individual music lessons? So.
What's the timing of launching this, or?
like in the next couple of weeks, we'll be starting to, but then adding more and more throughout the summer and then, you know, changing things around. It's really geared to be for a whole year, but within the next week or so, we'll start seeing some stuff out there, so.
Well, maybe you were gonna get to this, but I think one of the other kind of the really cool chocolate center of this thing is that it serves two purposes. It really highlights at its core the things that we can do and provide as a school district across all the things that Superintendent Hahn just talked about that no other school district around here can do, period. So one, it makes the people who are bringing their kids here feel great that their kids are coming here. And then that feeds into the belong theme. But the other thing it does is it creates a little bit of FOMO for those that have the opportunity to come here either through open enrollment or because they live in our district and choose to go elsewhere, that there's a buzz, there's an excitement, there's something happening here. And I want my kids to go there. And and I was fortunate enough to be part of this group where we got to see the unveiling of all the different pieces and components of this thing. It's really, really cool. It's exciting.
We talk about a lot of our own families. What do you mean you serve children that are 3 days old? Brainerd Public Schools does that. What do you mean you're teaching kindergartners how to do coding and program mice? So they're getting, you know, high-end tech skills already at an early age. We do that, but we don't do a very good job of sharing that. And so that's the intent of this, is to really highlight a lot of the uniqueness that exists here, and not have our own people not even know that. We want to make sure everybody knows what's happening. So.
When it blends the story of these magnificent facilities that the taxpayers have given us the money to update, but near and dear to my heart, it talks about what's going on in them. And that's the more important part when you get right down to it, at least from where I sit.
And you're going to start to get, you know, there'll be student testimonials because there's lots of kids who know a lot more about what's happening because they live it every day. So, but this is just the sampling. But July 18th is, I think, the official, like, boom.
Yeah.
But we wanted to make sure there was everything in place to have it happen. Still no sound.
No, sorry.
No, wait, we're going to figure. Okay, well, eventually, somewhere in the middle of the meeting, we might just let that
I
play
think
for
at
sound.
each board meeting, you can play one of those with sound in the
Yeah.
future.
I kind of know the tune and I would hum it, but you guys don't want to hear that.
You could play it on your phone and hold the phone up to the microphone.
I could.
Very good.
I don't, yeah.
I don't think I have it on my phone. I think Anne Marie will.
Got my phone.
I do have the presentation attached to the agenda
Yeah,
now.
so you guys can, you should be able to, if you open that slideshow, is it in the slides or is it a PDF?
How did you send it to me?
It was a slide, yeah.
And that's how it is.
Okay, good.
Is this something that could be shared with our chamber and Bladek as well? I think that would be a nice, I could see them adding it to their
Yes.
websites too.
To share it with.
Bladek and the chamber.
For sure, yeah.
I meet with Matt this week, so.
I would even think maybe, you know, we have a great connected group of real estate agents. I would think as they're bringing new families into the community, what a great thing to put in their hands, some promo pieces about our schools. I mean,
Yep.
when new families are coming to the area, that's what they want to see.
One of
is
the
to move
pieces
their
we will
school.
be working on too is some type of a printed, you know, handout type of thing, although those get dated so quickly, you know, but we'll try to create something that has some life to it, and yeah. So it's one of the plans, but
But again, when you think comprehensive, it's all gonna link back to that positioning
yeah.
statement. And how fun to have big blue bees on every building now.
I like that. Yeah.
It's good, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Place to belong.
Any other questions?
So more to come with sound next time.
Okay. Thanks for all your hard work on that.
I'll do one.
Okay, next up, we have the approval of our consent calendar.
I'll move to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we have a first from Director Boyles, a second from Director Glantz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then I get to interrupt you because with that consent agenda, I'm going to introduce you to 4 new
Oh.
members of our team. Some new, some not so new. But I just want them to get a quick chance to introduce themselves to you. So Kathy Johnson's coming up first. So I'll let her start since she's the eager. But come on, Isaac, come on, Derek, come on, Jill. You're all coming up at once. We can grab 4 plastic chairs or just give a standing greeting.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
Isaac Schmidt.
I'm Tom.
Nice to meet you, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Isaac, good to see you again.
I think I know you.
Good to see you again.
And I think I know you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And then Kathy, why don't you give a brief introduction about yourself? Just so people
So I actually taught here in Brainerd for 20 years.
come by the mic. There we go.
So I was a teacher in Brainerd for 20 years. And then I recently went to Staples for the last 9 years. So I've been the elementary principal at Staples Motley Elementary. I live in Baxter and have 2 daughters. So.
And you are a new,
And I am the new elementary principal at Lowell.
thank you. We're excited to have you.
So I'm Isaac Schmaya. I'm the new assistant principal at Forest View Middle School. I'm very excited to be here. I was previously in Anoka Hennepin for the last 15 years with administrative in the elementary, so K through 5. So I'm excited for my new role in Brainerd. I have a lot of teaching experience in the 4th through 8th grade realm, along with Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 interventions with the MTSS systems, with MDA, or with MDE, and throughout the state with working through multi-tiered systems and supports. So I'm very excited to be here.
Excited to have you.
Hello, Derek Hendrickson. I've been the Dean of Students and Activities Director at Forest View for the last 10 years and transitioning into the Assistant Principal role this year. Very excited to get to work with Isaac and John and just continue to do great things for our kids at Forest View. Also have 2 kids in our district, one a sophomore and one a 7th grader, which is just telling me that I'm getting a lot older. So that's about all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek.
Hi, I'm Jill Bjorgi. I'm so absolutely thrilled and feel so fortunate to be the principal at Riverside Elementary. It's where I started in the district 22 years ago, and prior to that, taught in Las Vegas. So over the course of the 23 years, a majority of my time has been spent in this district, serving in many different capacities from birth through 5th grade, and also being the literacy coordinator for 7 years. So I am, like I said, beyond thrilled to be able to serve the parents and the teachers and the students at Riverside, and I look forward to learning and growing for many years to come. So, thank you.
Just because we hired, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to meet him before the school started. So, and then that hopefully helps our families put some faces to names, and we're just thrilled. And the best part about, I think what's been overwhelming with our new hires is they absolutely want to be here and do great things. So they were very overwhelmed and humbled when they got offered, and we are just thrilled to have them with us. So it's exciting.
Wonderful.
It's a great place to be, right?
It's a great place to be. They got a lot of work ahead, so don't scare them yet.
Well, welcome and thank you for introducing them, Superintendent Hahn. And we'll go on to our 4 action. First up, we have presentations and actions from Damian Williams, Mark Needham, and Reed Teesey. This is exciting stuff you have to present to us.
Yep.
So, thrilled.
All right, I'm Mark Needham with ICS, here to present a couple items for your consideration for the Washington Educational Services Building. The first one is to approve the award of the contracts to, or approve the award of contracts for the bids that we received on June 21st of this year to the general construction scope for the general construction scope to high-tech construction, the electrical scope to Holden Electric, and in that recommendation, we included the bid alternate to upgrade or redo the lighting on third floor and in the gym to make those LED fixtures. And then for the fire protection scope to Breath Zinzin Fire Protection. And in the board book, we included the letter recommending award, the bid tabs, and the bids from June 21st. Any questions on that first item? Okay, the second item is to approve the award of contracts or award a contract to the mechanical package for Thielen Heating and Roofing. And again, based on the bids that we received on June 21st of this year, and then in the bid or in the board packet is included or includes the bid tabs, the bids received, and the letter recommending award for them as well. Any questions on that second item?
So, and what we're excited about is this actually came in under budget with all of our concerns with everything going on, so.
Yeah, for the most part, it's local companies.
Yes.
Yes.
And I don't want to pour Reed in too hard here, but I think it's duly rewarding that we get the low enough bids from local companies to be able to award these things. But Director Nelson and I were touring a building over at the high school this afternoon. Reed, I hate to put you on the spot, but you want to tell a little story about the work that had to be done and how our local companies stepped up for us? Sure. Yep. I think it's a really good story, and I think the community would like to hear it.
Sure, absolutely. And again, I wasn't there every day firsthand to witness all of this, but this is the message that I've heard from the updates at the construction meetings, and Mark was on site there as well. But you remember a few board meetings ago, we had a very significant issue that we ran into with a plumbing line in a building, right? And it was going to put our project at risk. The Board of Education decided to move forward with a change event, put a significant amount of work on RJ Mechanical, who I believe is part of our mechanical team's bid on this project. The conversation was, how are we going to pull this off, right? We already have a timeline that is nearly impossible to meet, doing almost $11 million worth of construction in 67 days in a building. And what was really nice to see was at the construction meeting, I mean, really hard conversation about how are we going to pull this off, and to have local contractors come to the table to say, RJ, we get it. You got a big, big ask of you right here to pull this plumbing change off. Here's how we can help. And, we get companies like High Tech that kick in, that Anderson Brothers that jumps in, and they send an excavator over and operators, and High Tech gets a skid steer and a bunch of laborers, and all of these people work together to pull this off. And what we thought was going to be a 4-week delay to the project, which would put us into the start of school, turned out to be down to single-digit days. So something that we could absorb on the project and figure our way out. So yes, it's great, Director Boyles, to hear and see our local contractors come to the table every time we go out to bid, and to come in swinging with their best options for us here. So we're excited. I think we got a really good team here, and we're looking forward to the project.
Thanks, Reed. And to put a postscript on it, I mean, it's not just those companies coming together. It's you guys, it's ICS, it's you, it's our staff. It was just really, really impressive.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So,
I'll move to
okay, go ahead.
I'll move to approve the bids under item 1 to High Tech Holden and Breath Zanzan Fire Protection as presented.
I'll second.
Who got it? Okay, we have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And do we have a motion for the approval for Thielen Heating and Roofing?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blackglance. Any further discussion?
I did notice the PDF in here is the Holden one, not the Thielen
Oh,
contract, but,
Changed this afternoon, it's still,
well, at least at my computer.
oh, okay.
It says Thielen, but when I click on it,
Okay.
it says
I'll get
Holden.
the
But,
correct
and I will abstain from voting due to conflict. And thank you for setting those separate again.
okay, so we have first from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blackglance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0 with one abstention.
4-0.
4-0, oh, thank you, 4-0 with one abstention. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And thanks for the tour today, it was impressive.
Isn't it? It's gonna be exciting.
So next up, we have approval of the Minnesota School Boards Association membership renewal and policy service subscription for 2022, 2023.
So this isn't near as exciting as the other items, but no, it's actually a decrease from last year of $220 for our
That's
membership.
exciting to me.
Is this exciting? So there you go. There's a little excitement. But we need to renew our memberships. Would like a motion to do so.
So moved.
I will second.
Sorry.
That was quick. First from Director Blackglance, a second from Director Sjogren. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. And
Then the next is a membership to our Minnesota Rural Education Association, MREA, and that is, there's no cost increase. It remains the same.
I will move to approve.
I'll second.
okay, we have a first from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Blackglance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. And next we have Mr. Murtha coming up to talk about our, oh, this is a resolution. Okay.
Good evening. The first of my agenda items is the annual renewal of the Iowa Authority, the individual officer with authority. The purpose of this is to designate one person in the district who maintains the gatekeeping on which administrators and members of the district as employees have access to which forms of data at NDE. So whether it's SPED forms or whether it's finance or whether it's special education, there are different areas in MDE that require secure access for the preservation of privacy of student data or employee data. So we have a gatekeeper on that. Therefore, as annually stated, I'm responsible for making sure the appropriate person in the district is assigned that, and they're the only ones assigned with that responsibility. So it's a somewhat clerical position.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We're taking turns by sides of tables.
First from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Oh,
It's a roll call
thank
vote for
you.
its resolution.
Said that
Kevin
at the
Boyles,
beginning.
Yes.
Tom Hagelin,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson.
Yes.
Jana Sjogren,
Yes.
Charles Blackglance.
Yes.
All present are in favor.
Okay, thank you. So that resolution is approved. And you can go right on to your next agenda
The
item.
next one is the annual approval of the student handbooks, which we send out to print. We'd be requesting for the approval of the standardized handbook, which core elements are the same all the way across. We've provided in the board agenda copies of early childhood, the elementary schools, which all have the same handbook, a copy of the middle school, the high school, the LEC, and the BLC, just to make sure that any different areas are represented. You received notification earlier of what the key pieces were that are different this year in terms of updates. It was a previous request from the board not to have to read all 11 of the handbooks to figure out which was the portions that are changing. So the key ones that are done, we've provided you. And they fall into the areas of information around pre-K, childcare, fun and friends, the family collaborative workers, preferred name and gender in accordance with state and federal law, Section 504 update, some special education language, clarification of the programming that we now use in Title I Part A, and then clarification on the BHS school day. So those are the areas where the language has been refreshed. If you go through any of the books, there are some changed phone numbers, there's staffing changes, whether a clerical's moved on, is no longer the school secretary, that name has been replaced. The core of a handbook falls into a couple areas. One is the practical, what time can you drop off, what time can you pick up? There is the procedural, who do you ask when you have a question of? And then there's the policy-wise. So what is the district's handling of discipline incidents? Or what is the district's handling of requests for information or for requests for such as 504 support? These are all grounded in district policy and state law. So the procedures that come there get reviewed first in board policy, that's where they're approved, and from there, they go to the team that's behind me. And so they're the ones who have to do whatever operational work and operationalize whatever that policy is. So they're the ones who have to handle the 504 form. And what's required of them to write this book is the ability to link statute and policy with that practical application. Certainly, we would welcome any input from anyone. In the 9 years that I've been bringing handbooks to you, we've never had a question about them. I certainly welcome any conversation with Gene if he wants to follow up with me afterwards. If the school board's interested in treating the handbook, which is a derivative of a policy, in essence, the same way it handles policy, you could do a first and second reading if you wanted it out there public. But the school board is the publicly elected representatives of the community whose responsibility is, through the act of governance, to review the work of the district to make sure it's both in accordance with state law and reflects the values of the community that elected them.
I think we can add to that though, Tim. So if a parent does have a question or guiding input, they would speak directly to the building administrator.
They should go first to the school principal, and if the question is beyond the operations of that principal in terms of management of her building, then that question should be elevated to someone at the central office for clarification of which board policy is in place.
And we do these every year, and we update them every year, but not a lot changes every year.
Not a lot changes. Most of the time, we're updating phone numbers and names. There are times when the legislature changes law, which compels us to change policy. And then from the change of policy, we'll change language in the handbooks. Case in point, there was update to language to the 504 policies this year. That would be policy number 615 and 521. Okay, so somewhat obscure unless you're the parent of a kid who's got a broken leg and needs help getting around the school. That's what a 504 is. It's about healthcare accommodations in the school. So the statute tells us what we're allowed to do. We will put that into policy, and then the practical aspects for how to execute that in the schools is what's reflected in the student handbook. So the parents can look that up.
Yeah.
And every parent
always
gets
found
sent a copy of this at the start of the school year.
The handbook was a very helpful thing to have as a parent.
The one thing, as usual, before I got off on a little bird walk and apologize, is meal prices and the price of milk are not included in what's in front of you for approval. The approval of that comes in a later presentation of the school board meeting. When you approve Alyssa's meal prices and milk prices, we will include that then under that authority in the handbook for publication.
Tim, do we still print for every family? Or is it only when requested?
Somewhere in between the two. We print a lot less. We print, for some of the sites, still prefer to send home, and so we allow them. But the majority of them are sent home digitally, and it's posted on the district website for anyone to access at any time. And we keep a handful of copies down in the Welcome Center. So if someone comes in with questions about the district, whether it's questions about enrollment or otherwise, we give them a copy from there. We'll never be 100% paper-free, but we're moving that way.
Say never. You're getting closer.
I'm getting old, Tom. The clock's running out.
You're getting closer. Well, the nice thing about the digital, of course, is you can update it as milk prices are approved or whatever it might be. So.
We could, but we would be coming to you then for reapproval of a handbook. As you know how much policy changes in a year, that would be annual. It's easier for the principals to dedicate a season of work for this in the spring, and it's a horrible time. It's the end of the school year. But if they have one opportunity to do this, get it done, get it corrected, bring it to the board for review, questioning, and do that as the most efficient use of everyone's time.
That's good for parents too. Almost all of us carry this with us every day. I'm not gonna carry a student handbook around with me if I have a question about my kids.
Oh, don't doubt me on my desire to see it digital, but there will always be certain families, by virtue of their circumstance, require a paper copy, and we'll always provide a print copy for them.
I would move to approve the handbooks as presented.
A second.
A first from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Hagelin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you in 20 minutes.
Okay, approval of the 10-year updated long-term facilities maintenance plan.
Good evening. So this is done annually. We put together a plan. Director of Buildings and Grounds puts together a plan for the next 10 years on our projected expenses, and along with ICS puts together with the Blueprint 181 plan, and that is the expenses summary. And then we fill in what our fund balance is, and you can see the projection on the expenses. Our fund balance is projected to be deficit after 6 years. I don't want you to be alarmed by that. I mean, this is a 10-year forecast. We'll adjust as needed. We'll reevaluate every single year, but that's what our projection is at right now. And then also it's based on student enrollment. So on the revenue projection, you'll see there's a current year APU, which is adjusted pupil unit. We put in our projections. If we go up in enrollment, our revenue would likely go up as well. So it's kind of a formality that we have to send this into the state, giving them an idea of what we're estimating for revenues and expenses. Any questions?
I guess none. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Tom got me.
First from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Hagelin. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
I have this next one. So before you are, so are we going to number 8? I didn't mean to jump ahead.
Yep, no, we are going to number 8.
So our mental health contracts, so I'm pleased to report that working with our mental health provider, we'll continue to have similar services as well as some expansion with some mental health counselors available during WIN times at the high school for the same costs as we've been paying. There shows a slight increase, but part of that is when we had a shortened day at the high school, they adjusted some of that coverage. They never adjusted it back last year, so you're seeing that increase. So they basically took care of that expense last year. Now it's back into our contract. So it's the same service at the same expense, which is a gift from my opinion, from our Northern Pines agency. So those contracts are in place, the district contract, and then we have an additional one for Brainerd High School and the Brainerd Learning Center.
And we still do the surveys of the teachers.
Correct. So, correct. They actually do them quarterly, and so we requested from, and I'll go back to Sammy Cross, she would like to come back to the board and present the findings from that. They do that annually, so they can give you feedback on number of students they're servicing, issues that they're seeing, teacher satisfaction, student satisfaction, parent satisfaction. So they give you those ratings. So Sammy can come back and report that to us.
That would be good. We have a motion to approve.
So move.
I'll second.
First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Blacklands. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And you're back.
I'm back. Wasn't 10 minutes though.
Yeah.
So in your packet is the ice arena license agreement. In years past, it has been a 3-year term. However, when we sat down and met with them, we discussed, they're wanting us to research if there's any way we can help with improvements. Also, with our decreased enrollment, we're at our cap with our lease levy. So this is a 2% increase. Hopefully, if enrollment goes up, we could talk about a future, what does that look like? Because right now, we don't have the capacity to help in any way, really. So it's a 1-year term so that we could reevaluate it next spring and see if there's any change in enrollment. If not, we'll have another conversation with them on what that looks like. Nothing else in the contract has changed, just basically the rate.
And they're okay with the 1 year?
They were the one who asked for that.
Okay. Yeah, I would move to approve.
Second?
Okay, we have a first from Director Hagelin, a second from Director Boyles. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
First reading of MSBA Policy 709, Student Transportation Safety Policy.
I don't see
Norby.
Norby. So, and then so really there's not a lot of change in that policy. The one thing that was adapted was expanding the definition of tobacco. So we now include e-cigarettes or any electronic tobacco device, which includes vaping, so that's prohibited, and there's charges that come, but that's probably the only line change that's in that policy. We just expanded that definition. And it's actually being recommended for final approval. It's saying it's a second reading. We have it on here as a first reading. So.
I'll move that we approve the policy as presented in final reading format.
Yeah, it says the first reading was in June, so this is actually, it should say second reading. Okay. In the agenda. Okay.
Okay. So a first from Director Boyles, a second from Director Sjogren to approve the second and final reading of MSBA Policy 709.
Again, only changes defining what tobacco.
I remember reading this the other day. That was it.
That's it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then the first reading of revised MSBA Policy 608.
Joel gets the cushy chair. That's nice.
She's got to stay after for another one too, so I should have taken this one.
That's all right. Well, welcome. I would like to introduce to you, if you have not met him yet, Mr. Joel Anderson. Joel Anderson is our Assistant Director of Special Education with the Paul Bunyan Education Co-op.
Nice to meet you all. Just completed my first year, so happy to be here. Love it so far.
Yeah, you can't say you're new anymore.
Right.
That expires
Can't
today.
blame that. Can't use that anymore.
I was told I got 2 years of that. Is it different for Joel?
Joel was special. We gave him 1 year.
Okay. So Joel and I are bringing proposed changes to School Board Policy 608 on instructional services for special education based upon the recommendations of the Minnesota School Board Association. Consulted Joel, we've consulted district and building administration. This policy really only has one minor language change, which is to use that people first language. So children with a disability instead of disabled children. And then there's a small grammatical change.
Okay.
Those are really the only updates.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
First from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Blacklands. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You have another one. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right, and then the next policy is Policy 605 on alternative programs. This is the second reading of that policy. It's proposed for its final approval. No changes have been requested or made since the acceptance of the first reading on June 9th.
Move to approve.
Second. First from Director Boyles, a second from Director Sjogren. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then approval on the second reading of MSBA Policy 902.
Good evening again. I have in your packets tonight the second reading for policy number 902, Appendix A, and the new Appendix B that were all presented for their first reading at the June board meeting. The only requested change that was done is in the main policy 902 on section 7, letter C. At the very end, we refer to the new Appendix B policy in the online version. There'll be a link directly to that policy, which describes in detail the Gitche alcohol beverages procedure. So, any questions about anything with this?
With the with the fees for the use of the Gitche.
Yes.
And I did receive, I think probably all received some emails regarding, for example, dance.
Yep.
And how they're classified.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that the view that I have with all those type of activities, like for dance, I guess personally I see that as a feeder program to our high school programs. So are they considered that in the fee schedule?
They are considered a for-profit. If you're referring to like the Just for Kicks or the Music General, those are both businesses. So they are at the tier 4. They don't hold a nonprofit status. So,
right.
So this is actually kind of a separate piece. This, but I included the Gitche Center for the Arts fee schedule. So I did want to visit a little bit about that. We, if this passes tonight, we had separated those fee schedules from the actual policy. So it will be something I'd bring to you for consideration and approval, but separately, allowing me to make changes to it a little bit more flexibly. We separated out the entire Gitche just because it's such a complicated space. And actually, I'll just quickly go through, instead of just pricing based on tiers, before it was just very simple, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 1 being a district event, 2 being a youth nonprofit, 3 being an adult nonprofit, and 4 being a for-profit user. We actually have looked at the events in the amount of complexity that they involve for our staff. We have anyone coming, we might have someone coming in just to run a meeting where they need a microphone and some basic slides or something, to a full-scale production, which is obviously a lot more complicated. So our Gitche manager actually went through and kind of designed what he classifies as 6 different levels. The first being use only of the lobby space that you'd maybe use for a banquet or some type of event that doesn't really require any type of, they wouldn't be using the theater space at all. The second level being more of a meeting type of event. And he kind of describes each event in this policy here. But he will also be reviewing, he visits with any client that comes in to use the space. So he would be reviewing exactly what their needs are to make sure exactly where they fit. But basically goes from a meeting to a recital, to a rehearsal, to a concert, to a full-blown special event, full production. And then the pricing that he put together is based off of that, depending upon how many hours they spend in the space. And then there'd be extra pricing for things going over that 8 hours. We didn't have that in the policy before, and we had that happen a few different times this year where people would come in for an event and it would go for 12 plus hours, and our staff are there that whole time. So just to make sure we're we're charging extra for those long events. And then underneath this fee schedule here that you'll see, the nonprofit tier, what was considered tier 2 would be the adult nonprofit, a 20% discount, and a youth nonprofit, a 25% discount, to kind of keep it in line with how we've given discounts for those tiers before. But again, they're going to be looking at those different levels of events. So if a youth group comes in to do a dance recital, you know, it's a little bit less work than having a full-scale concert coming in, so.
And the intent of it is to make it cost neutral. So what's happening right now is the school district is expending dollars on staffing, custodial, the operations of things, and those costs aren't being collected or covered. So when you look at that, that's the other thing. So when we have concerns being raised about a group coming in, really it is to offset the cost of district staff that's being provided to host their event there. That's the intent. And that's why I think the more detailed fee schedule that they're looking at and for you to consider moving forward to combine with those tiers makes a lot more sense. Because it is. If you're a for-profit, but you're just having your State Farm meeting with 600 agents and you want to show 10 slides, that's different than we're going to do a 2-week theater production with lots of lights and staging and rooms, and so it's a good way to look at it. But I think that is something to keep in mind too, as the public comes and says, we need this space. We also need to be able to cover the expense of having you in that space, rather than the school district paying for that for-profit event. So cover the cost of custodians and the technician to be there.
So the conversation, understood, it probably doesn't necessarily need to take place here. I apologize, I didn't bring this up earlier.
No, that's okay.
Charles, I think it's a good question because you're getting the questions. So people are knowing we're looking, the community understands we're looking at better ways to access and utilize that space. So those questions are starting to percolate. So I think it's a great question to bring forward.
But my understanding from your comments is we don't have to decide what those tiers and fee structures look like. We just have to approve the governing policy on top of it.
Correct. So,
that
and that we're removing these for, but I also want feedback on these fees if you have some, and we're also still working on our general fees. We'll just have a few minor changes to those from what was set by Corey before she left. So there's just some, this is specifically just to the Gitche-Ziba, and it's quite a change from how the fees were simply laid out before, so.
Yeah, I appreciate the work on it. We needed to make a change, and I like what's been presented. I'm assuming that Reed's been involved with the manpower, what it takes to really monitor this. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting this together.
So yeah, we might just need to, we all got the emails from Music General, so we just need to sit down with them and go through what's involved in the costs and the different options they have. And
I think the biggest takeaway, and it's good for people who are watching to hear, that we're not trying to make money off of this fee schedule, right? We're trying to cover our expenses.
Right. And then there are significant expenses with the space, so.
So we'll be able to have this conversation later. Okay. Thank you. Wonderful.
So, do you want to?
Well, given that, I'll make a motion to approve the second and final reading of policy 902.
I'll second.
okay, we have a first from Director Boyles, a second from Director Schobran. Any further discussion?
Only because of all four in here, including Appendix B, I will be voting against.
Okay.
But I appreciate the work. And the fee schedule.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, so motion carries 3-2. Okay, thank you. And then approval of revised calendar changes for the 2022-2023 school calendar as presented. Mr. Murtha again. Welcome back.
I'm like a bad penny, I always turn up. What the administration is requesting is for the revision of the 22-23 approved district calendar for instructional days by converting 2 instructional days to teacher work days. The request follows on the success we had with the employee success plan from last year. And whereas we believe that the rationale that led to the employee success plan, which we can go through, conditions will be better. We're still not out of the woods yet. There's still going to be concerns about managing workload, staffing, the use of prep time for subbing, things that led to some of the challenges staff were experiencing last year. It will be an improvement, but we still will be faced with some of those challenges. So what we want to do is make sure that we're providing particularly teachers, opportunities to work in their classroom, whether this is grading, whether this is instructional prep, but give them that opportunity 3 times during the school year as a way of taking the pressure off the end of trimester and the end of school year responsibilities to make sure that we're managing workload for staff and making sure that we're not burning people out. Last year was an exhausting year, as we're all aware. The feedback the administration received is that this is one of the best things that we've ever done for our teachers in providing those opportunities last year. And so I'd ask that we provide them again this year. So what we're asking for is the January 3rd of 2023, which is the first day back after the winter holidays, to be converted to a teacher workday. Give them the opportunity before students return on the 4th to, after the holiday break, to get their classrooms ready, to get their instruction ready, to finish up any grading that needs to be done. This also occurs in a timely nature relative to semester break for the secondaries, somewhat in the middle of the second trimester. Also adding April 10th as a teacher day as well will go a long way to helping with the end of the year preparation teachers have, particularly since they're just coming out of, and they're in the thick of, either they're in the thick of, they're coming out of the testing scenarios for the spring, which includes MCA testing, balanced literacy testing, or text leveling at the elementary, plus placement testing for classes for next year. There's an awful lot of pressure on teachers at that time. To provide teachers an opportunity in the fall, prior to January 3rd, we'll slide one of the in-service activities we had planned in November to April 10th. So we'll split that day. That'll be half in-service, half teacher work time. And teachers will be provided the same opportunity in November, half in-service, half teacher work time. There's a way of spreading it out throughout the year.
So netting that out, where do we stand if we insert these two? Where do we stand versus the state? Like we were prior to this past school year, we were running what was like in terms of instructional days, like 6 days ahead or 8 days ahead or something?
About 17, 18 days ahead at the minimum. So converting 2 for, and I can run through that for you. So at the elementary level, what we would have is 67,545 instructional minutes if we did the 171 days. If we did 169 days, you're down to 66,755 minutes, or about 1,013 hours. We're 27 days beyond the requirement of the state for days of instruction and minutes of instruction. We're in no risk at the elementary level, nor are we at any risk at the middle school, at the high school level. We're not really in risk at Forest View either, though the windows are a little bit shorter. So the 27 days at the elementary becomes 16 days at the middle school level. So we're not in any danger of ever coming close to touching the statutes about how much instruction we have. We provide a very long, thorough school year.
When you're not the only ones that receive feedback, I mean, I'm sure other board members received it as well, but I received voluminous amounts of positive feedback from our staff as it relates to putting those days in. And my own belief on it is that I would rather have non-fried teachers teaching our kids with energy a few fewer days. It feels like that's a more productive use than trying to cram all these extra days in there.
I think administratively, we want to make sure we understand that productivity is about that ratio of input to output. So modifying the inputs improves productivity, as you said. The burnout is a key issue. we don't want to monitor productivity in terms of minutes of contact with children. It's the quality of those minutes of contact with children that matter. That's why we have a curriculum process. That's why we have a PLC process. That's why we have in-service days already, is we're manipulating the inputs to make sure that teachers are prepared to do the best they possibly can when they're in front of children.
What's your feedback from your site leaders and staff representatives as it relates to, is this enough? Or did they request more, or is this some kind of compromise, or is this, how does this fit into the overall?
Oh, I think they would probably welcome.
I mean, I know everybody would take more, but I mean, you know.
And this is in the middle from where we landed at the employee support plan. So we had more last year that we put in as that kind of emergency plan after feedback from staff. This is backing off from that.
Right.
And it's beyond just teacher too. So the feedback you got when if you would talk to Alyssa and you look at food service, and we time them around some breaks, that gives extended time for food service to prep to get the materials in, rather than just that rush back. Same thing with custodial staff. Custodial staff had came back and said that was a gift to have an extra day added on a weekend. When you look at, we already are working short staff custodial. The larger spaces, the demands we've put on them for all the moving that's gone in construction, they found that time extremely valuable without all the foot traffic happening. So feedback from all angles of our staff are very positive.
And this is it doesn't impact my own decision-making process, but from a budgetary impact perspective, when those kids aren't in school, it doesn't change the funding? Okay.
No, because we have we have a very long instructional day. That's why we're over those.
Okay.
So.
That is every question I had.
I just have more of a logistical comment about the calendar, and as a parent who's looked at one of these for many years, they're very confusing for parents with all the color coding. I don't know if we can have
just a parent
especially
version?
now. Well, I mean, even now. So it's like, as a parent, you go, well, okay, my kid doesn't have school on gray days, well, but they also don't have school on blue days. And now I see they maybe don't have school on a yellow day too, and
well, the yellow will be changed.
I think yellow is the highlighting.
I'm just, for a very busy parent of little kids, it's sometimes, I think this can be a very confusing document.
Yeah, we could,
So I don't think it would hurt to
simpler
clean it up, to have a
calendar for
family
parents.
version and an employee
They
version.
don't need to know how many.
I don't know.
Well, what we bring to the school board, maybe what we need to do is consider two different versions of this document. I do believe we want to bring to the school board this document, whether it's color-coded or not, sure. But we want to identify the number of instructional days at 169 versus 171 and where they're at. And part of where we're placing these days is about balancing instructional days, first semester, second semester, that sort of opportunity. So I think we want this document as it is. That doesn't mean we have to publish this document. We can strip out some of the instructional stuff to the right side and clean up the colors. I might not be the one to create a simpler diagram, but I would certainly be willing to try.
Just a thought, because I remember having, when
I'm guilty of inheriting the structure and never
Right.
changing it.
If I
So
looked
I'm
at this, I wouldn't know,
happy to review
does my
it.
kid have school in the end of the first semester, or is that a day off? You don't necessarily know.
So Kim, just one other question, as far as staff development days and days when you do that, how has that changed in the past few years?
Well, we've added
have
some more
one
in
extra.
staff development days, and in my mind, it's important to keep separate staff development from teacher work time.
Right.
I have to keep that clear in my mind because I'm allowed to spend staff development dollars for staff development, but I cannot spend it on teacher work time. That's statutorily excluded categorical funding. But what we've done is we've created a schedule of in-service days that supports the continuous improvement process of the district and the identified district priorities. So you look at the October 7th in-service day. That is a day that occurs early enough in the school year that sites coming out of the August CIP retreat and the ability to share what their CIP team did in Welcome Back Week, they can begin their implementation work or their common learning early enough in the year that it matters to this year. So it's sacred time for them, and that was an addition to last year's calendar. The November in-service day, or sometimes December, that Monday after the Thanksgiving break, is a historic in-service day where we have usually done either curriculum work or we've done some work with either cultural competency or with equity in general. What we'll do is we will slide the equity work into the January meeting, do grade level meetings so they have a fall curriculum writing opportunity and a fall elementary grade level opportunity in the morning. The afternoon becomes teacher work time. Then January 3rd is a full day for all staff in their classrooms just prepping after the holiday. January 6th, we'll move the instructional technology, which was always that morning, to the afternoon and start the day with cultural competency. March 16th, I'm sorry, did I say the 6th? My bad. March 3rd, grade level meetings again. This is the spring curriculum writing with CIP time for the sites. Then April again, CIP time with teacher work time. This isn't perfect, but we're spreading out the CIP work so they have implementation work in the fall, and then they have the opportunity to revisit and follow up, progress monitor their work throughout the school year, and then prepare for the closeout of the school year, and that cycle of improvement continues.
I think, so you've added 2 professional development days
Yep.
as a school board for very specific training for our staff. And if you want to look at surrounding calendars, this proposal in our calendar mirrors like our neighbor of the North Pequot Lakes Public School. So, but we did not have those 2 PD days prior to you adding them 2 years ago. So you have increased that PD time for our staff, professional development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim, I just saw this as I pulled it up earlier, and I might have missed it even last year, but I noticed the way we're labeling, it's now labeled winter break versus Christmas break and spring break versus like Good Friday. I know we had discussion about this a few years ago, and I don't know if this is new or if I actually missed it last year.
I don't remember if this is a change this year or
So we've been
not.
making those changes. When you look at having more inclusive language or reflective language, we have some families that don't celebrate those holidays, so trying to have a more all-inclusive language. So we switched from Good Friday to, I think that's spring.
Spring break and Good Friday would never have been concurrent in the schedule model. Those would have always been 2 different things. But I do believe that the Good Friday language has been removed.
And then spring break, because of where it falls, wouldn't necessarily coincide with the Easter holiday.
No,
And it's changed.
it almost never does.
We've tried to remove religious holidays and make a more inclusive title for all families.
Yeah, and I understand the reason, as we had discussed before as well, but if, as an example, in December, if we're not having that break because of Christmas, then to me, it doesn't make sense to kind of break it up that way. You know, so if we're having to break then because of Christmas, then why not label it as Christmas break, call it what it is, and if we're not having it because of Christmas, then, you know, would there be a better schedule versus the way it's laid out? And I don't want to hide behind it. If we're having a break then because of Christmas, why not call it Christmas?
Well, I think Christmas typically falls within that winter break, right? But that's just 2 days.
I would look at the contract language at this point for, you have 2 paid holidays during roughly a 1-week window. So for most years, you're going to have less than 3 or less days of school if you tried to have school that week without the break. And we've, schedule-wise, as a principal, we've always tried to prevent short weeks bringing staff and parent families in for something less than 4 days. So the break, whether we call it winter break or Christmas break, there will always probably be a break there because you're going to run into the 3-day rule.
Yeah, no, and I think it makes perfect sense, and you know, particularly because of the contract, we give 2 holiday breaks because of I think it's because of Christmas.
Right.
Is why there's the 2.
Might as well take the time off in between and load up there.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, why not just call it what it is?
The document that you have in front of you reflects a board-approved schedule. So the language that you see now should have been in the 22-23 calendar when it was recommended for approval in April of 2021.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe I missed it back then. And I think the schedule is perfect. I think what's laid out is great. I just didn't catch that before, why we wouldn't just call it what it is.
Just, truthfully, most people will call it Christmas break, whether it says winter break or Christmas break. That's just what people think of it as. I mean, it's Christmas break, so.
If you celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
Some families do not.
I know,
And we
but I
do
mean,
want to
most
make-
people will. I mean, I don't think it matters what it says here, and that's fine, so. But
I think it does matter. And what we're looking for is the inclusivity of making sure that everyone is treated equally in that moment. That whatever their family values, they value. If they choose to have a particular holiday celebration, that is a family's choice, and the district respects it.
But to answer your question, I don't know when it changed.
Neither do I.
We can go back and look at language in the calendars.
Well, I don't know if we're ready or not, but I would move to approve the calendar as presented.
Second.
thank you. We have a first from Director Sjogren, a second from Director Boyles. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have informational, starting with the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation with Director
Yeah,
Sjogren.
I really don't have an update. We don't meet in June and July.
Okay.
We'll meet again in August for a retreat, but I guess I would just remind everyone, if you want to get your Brainerd gear, it's at Visit Brainerd Downtown and available at Notch 8. So go get your stuff before it runs out and it's all the way to back to school time.
Good idea. Equity Task Force update. Is there anything else?
I would defer to Dr. Burkhart's earlier report.
Business Services.
We're supposed to report, Charles.
Kind of messed up your timing, didn't
Run.
In your packet, as promised, is an enrollment report, and it is early childhood. So I just want to kind of explain it a little bit. It has early childhood is the early childhood special ed. If there's fee-based, those ADMs are not in there. For example, school readiness. I don't have reports or data on that because we don't generate ADMs. The PK is voluntary pre-kindergarten. That started in 2019-20. That's why prior to that it's zeros. And then there's a line on there that you'll see I take the total early childhood and BPK times 3 because it's a little confusing when I present to you guys that we have 300 and some early childhood kids, but yet on here I'm showing 100. It's because of ADMs. So we generate about 1/3 of an ADM for each kid just because they're not in full-time, if that makes sense. So on here, for example, 2020-21 times 3, that's about 405 kids, but they only generated, bless you, about 119 or 135 ADMs, if that makes sense. And then below that, I just put in what the kindergarten enrollment was for that year, so you can see. And the reason why I did this is because we've heard this, that, you know, our early childhood is growing, and but we're not seeing that follow through in kindergarten. So I just wanted to show that yes, there has been some increases in early childhood and decreases, but there's not really a trend with what we're seeing come in through kindergarten, meaning we do have early childhood people coming in and participating, but they're not necessarily staying in our district.
So it's one of those data points we want to dig into further. So if you're coming for early childhood services, but you don't enroll in kindergarten, where did you go and why? And some of our families will tell you we have better services or access to services here than in surrounding areas compared to then kindergarten, it's ready to roll. So it's more data for us to look at when we're looking at enrollment and students and how to capture those students.
Great use of some of those stories and videos and such to get those families to stay.
Right. And then also in your packet is the financial report. The only thing I want to note is under the general fund supplies, there was a negative, which is kind of a red flag, and it was because we had a refund of devices. We had purchases of a large amount of devices, and we got a refund on those in May. So that's why there's a negative there. The June financial report, so I won't give anything to you guys until after the audit, which is scheduled to be in October. And then the second page is just based on the feedback from the last budget and from Dr. Hahn on what should we talk about for the budget this year. Put together the following attachment, and it is where were we at with the unassigned fund balance for 21-22, which is the 1.8, and then there's all these other things that are happening, right? So we got our first estimate of how we're going to end the year for 21-22. We had a submission to the state, And it's looking like we have 6,105 ADMs and the budget had 6,076, so plus 29, which is good. Estimated transportation savings, so not only did we not have routes filled, we also had less ridership. So there is a substantial savings there. In fact, when you look at 22, 23, we're going to talk about a potential adjustment in budget revision. Is that ridership going to remain lower, or are we going to see some kids come back and potentially have an increase in enrollment?
And it's a combination of both, because what we also had to do due to bus driver shortages, we combined a lot of routes. Or we doubled up on routes. So when you looked at our original route schedule to happen, and when we were short of bus drivers, you know, Norby, Fran, LC, and Kevra, so between Reichertz and Brainerd, we really looked at how do we get our students and how do we maximize that coming in. So we did it on fewer buses because we didn't have enough drivers. Well, then you're not paying for those routes. So then it looks at what is our true ridership, what are our needs, and there were some families who chose just not to have their students on the buses because of everything happening. So that's something for us to consider, but a lot of this savings happened because of a lot of hard work from 4 individuals starting every morning at about 4 a.m. to make sure that our kids were going to get picked up and brought in. So, and still, our families will tell you there were routes that were canceled that were very frustrated. So,
Yep. And then we did receive COVID-19 testing funds, so when our nursing staff had to do the testing weekly, we're going to code some of their time to that. That'll be a savings. We also have pandemic enrollment loss funds that we can code some of our staffing to, our current staffing. And then targeted services, that's another one that we're looking at using the learning loss funds for and have an application into MDE. We're going to submit one, revise our application and try to use those funds. So overall, with all those things, we're looking at an estimated deficit of only $79,000 for the prior year. And that is just, I mean, this is just the big stuff that I've been able to grasp at. I haven't even been able to dive into anything else. And then our fund balance would be at that 10.7 million or 11.63%. 22-23, the unassigned deficit, we're still at the 1.8. However, when we roll those 29 kids that were up potentially staying, you know, that would of course increase our ADMs for this year. I don't have a number in there because I don't know what that'll be. Potential transportation adjustment I already spoke about, and then targeted services, same thing, trying to use some of these funds for our targeted services programs, which operate at a loss right now, to cover some of that loss. So then we'd be at an estimated deficit of about 1.2, and which would put our fund balance at 9.4 or 10.48% within our fund balance policy. And then I summarized just as a recap of what we did for reductions, who we moved to CARES funds, and then also the additions that we had in 22-23.
It's good information. It's great news. It's good.
1.8 to 79,000. I would say that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, that's some potentially good news on the 22-23 stuff.
That's very good news.
Yep. And that's
Marcy stays in a little cubicle and starts to recode and refund us.
Just with everything that's happened in the past 2 years, the budget, it's just hard to know what's really gonna
happen.
Yeah.
And
so thank you for staying on top of it and adjusting it as we learn new things.
Trying.
I think the other summary is some of those questions of what specifically was reduced. And again, the priorities were given to keep lowest class size sections in our elementary. The priority was given to make sure we have an administrator in every building. So those are the reductions that led to getting to that.
Good job.
Great.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report.
I just want to go back and really highlight 1.8 to 79. That's no.
Good job. How many days? Nice work.
Thank you. No, I think it's exciting when you think of what we can do for our students, you know, and that's our priority, is the kids that are going to be with us in front of us every day. So the first few days have been exciting. I'm thrilled to have our administrative leadership team with you. These are the people that make the action happen every day. So kudos and credit to them. They're phenomenal. They're dedicated. They're excited too. So we had a fantastic leadership retreat together in June where we could really set some priorities and goal setting together as we move into the fall. So I'm very excited. So and again, I love my job, so I'm thrilled to be here. Even my new job, I love this one too. So that's all I have for the report.
Okay, thank you. Future meetings. Let's see here. I gotta make this bigger. We have a project oversight meeting. Well, you can read them yourself, but the next board meeting is August 8th. Oh my gosh, summer's going fast. And school board filings, we should probably highlight that they open, does it have the opening on here?
August 2nd.
August 2nd, and closes on August 16th.
And come see Janet and Marcy if you're gonna file for school board.
And then for all the kids listening out there, the first day of the school year is September 6th. Come up fast.
That's
So
right.
enjoy
I'm sure
these
they're
hot
all
summer
jumping
days.
up and down in their living rooms right now. Actually, I think their moms and dads and parents and guardians are jumping higher.
Okay, so is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
First from Director Schoger and a second from Director Hagelin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for coming.
Okay, you set a nice precedent. This was an hour and 40 minutes.